challenger banks. If you haven't heard this term before, challenger banks are startups that are looking to change the way that we do our everyday banking, tackling anything from simple savings and checking account all the way to sophisticated investment solutions. We'll look at how these banks can save you a ton of money no matter where you live, and especially if you travel a lot or live as a digital nomad. Chances are you've heard of some of these companies before. In the US, you have access to banks like Stash, Varo, Dave, Current, SoFi, Chime. And in Canada, you have Koho, Neo, Wealthsimple, MOGO, and Stack. And finally, in England and the EU, you have banks like Revolut, Monzo, Starling, and Wise, just to name a few. This video is not sponsored by any of the banks I just mentioned. I'll simply show you which ones I use given where I currently live, and I'll give you the 5 reasons for why I think signing up with the challenger banks is one of the fastest way to start saving more money today. And just before we get going, I want to say a quick thank you to you, the viewer, for watching this video and for supporting small channels on YouTube. It really means a lot to me and a lot of other creators out there. So with that said, let's get started with the 5 reasons why you should sign up with at least one challenger bank, or even a few if you want to optimize further. The first reason is that the cards look amazing. I'm kidding, that's not actually one of the 5 reasons, but the cards do look amazing. And I think that's actually one of the main marketing hooks for a lot of these companies. And I don't understand why the big banks aren't catching up to this. But for real, the first reason to go with a challenger bank is that it's so easy to sign up. This doesn't just make your life easier, but it also makes us part of a larger movement, which is making finance more accessible to everybody. This is commonly referred to as banking the unbanked. Signing up for any of the companies I mentioned before will literally take 5 minutes, and you can do it right now on your phone. Why is this important? Well, when I moved to London in 2018, I actually ran into a problem that a lot of people seem to run into when they move to England, which is that no major bank would give me a bank account. In order to apply for a bank account in England, you need proof of residence in the form of a gas or electricity bill, and the only way to get a gas and electricity bill is by having your name on a British lease, and the only way to have your name on a British lease is by having a British bank account. There are some clever ways to get out of this catch-22, but the best one I found at the time was to sign up with a bank called Monzo. They've got these bright orange cards, a simple to use app, no foreign transaction fees, the real exchange rate on all foreign transactions, and the only thing you need to sign up is a proof of ID and a short video. So if you're having trouble getting a bank account for whatever reason, or you don't want to pay the high fees that some of the big banks push on you once you've opened an account, then you should definitely consider looking into a challenger bank. And before we move on to reason number 2, I want to say that if you or anyone you know is new to the country or is currently homeless, make sure they know about these services. Because while many big banks don't give accounts to people without proof of residence, Monzo, for example, has specifically made it their mission to bank the unbanked, to make sure that everybody has access to a checking account so they can get a job, start saving money, and building credit. The second reason to use a challenger bank is that there are 0 fees. 0 fees to sign up, 0 fees to maintain a checking account, 0 fees for credit cards, and 0 fees for foreign transactions. That alone can potentially save you thousands of dollars a year. Between your typical credit card fee, your typical $10 a month to maintain your checking account, your foreign transaction fees when you travel or when you shop in a different currency online, you'll be surprised by how much money you can save simply by going with a challenger bank. The third reason to go with a challenger bank is because they make it so easy to save money beyond the fees. The most common ways you'll find are instant cash back on prepaid credit cards that will match or even outperform the rewards of the credit cards offered by many of the big banks. If you have a credit card that costs a lot and that is in a specific niche like travel rewards, you might get more points with your current credit card, but you want to make sure that what you're getting out of it is really worth the fee. And you also want to take a close look on what you're actually spending your money on day by day. I use a challenger bank called Koho, and in their premium package, they offer 2% cash back on groceries, any and all food and drinking, transportation, and they currently have a 4% cash back on Netflix and Spotify. So it's worth keeping an eye out on the exact amounts that these banks offer relative to what you're actually spending your money on. And while it doesn't seem like a lot, these amounts can really stack up over time and save you a lot of money in the long run. Another way that these challenger banks can save you money is by automatically rounding up every purchase that you make to the nearest dollar and then putting that away into a separate vault. Vaults is something that most challenger banks will offer you, which is basically just a separate bucket to put some money in. You can still access it at any time, but it's not going to show up in your spendable balance, which makes it less likely that you're going to spend that money on unnecessary purchases. I personally always keep 3 to 6 months of emergency buffer in cash in my vault, and I don't have to open a separate savings account for that, which makes my life a lot easier. Beyond that, you can also set up separate buckets for specific goals like buying a house, a car, or a vacation commission and then put money into those vaults specifically. This brings us to reason number 4 to use a challenger bank, and that is interest rates. Most of these banks offer more than 1% interest on your entire balance, whether you have it stashed away in a vault or not. And while that doesn't sound like a lot compared to your typical returns in real estate or in the stock market, the fact of the matter is that you do need to keep a certain portion of your net worth stashed away in cash in case there is an emergency, or in case your income drops, or in case you need to pay taxes if you're self-employed. That means that whatever the amount of cash is that you've determined that you need to stash away for that purpose, you can be sure that you've optimized your interest on that cash, because right now you'll be hard pressed to find a savings account with a major bank that offers you any interest at all, let alone more than 1%, unless you stash it away and lock it up for 1 year, at which point you can't retrieve it in case of an emergency and it defeats the purpose. Right now, my challenger bank offers me 1.2% interest on my entire balance, which I'm more than happy with, and any savings beyond that I dollar cost average into the stock market or into crypto. The final reason to go with a challenger bank is simplicity. I love thinking about finances every day, but chances are that you don't, and that you're simply looking for a set it and forget it solution instead of having 50 different accounts open and balancing them all the time. Usually, whenever you go with just one service, you tend to leave some money on the table because that is the price you pay for convenience. But with a challenger bank, that might no longer be the case. Most of the banks mentioned in this video will offer you checking and saving all within the same app, and some of them will even offer you things like loans, investments, and crypto trading in the same platform. Some will let you invest actively, while others offer you robo investment services where algorithms invest your money for you according to your risk preferences. And since interest is usually paid out on your entire balance, regardless of where within your app the money is sitting, you can just set it and forget it and know that you've optimized your savings without having to worry about it. Now you can set up recurring transfers between your spendable balance and your investments, and you can go about your day knowing that you're getting the most out of your everyday banking. Are there any downsides? For now, the answer is not really. As far as I can tell, most of these banks offer protection on your balances, which is a huge point for a lot of people. That is generally up to $100,000 in most of the cases that I've seen, which is more than enough for everyday banking. The companies are recognized as real banks, so you won't be treated differently by any third party if you use a challenger bank. Most of the banks mentioned in this video hold their funds with a third party that invests with them. So between the gains that they make on those investments and the overhead that they cut by being only app-based, they can pass those savings on to you and offer you higher interest rates along with no fees across the board. The two things that might be considered downside is that there is no physical branches, so you need to pick a challenger bank that has really good customer service via the phone. And the second thing is that most of the credit cards offered by these banks are prepaid, which means that it's not real credit. Banks like Koho still let you grow your credit rating for a small fee, but if your bank doesn't offer that service, or if you need to take on credit card debt for a short period of time, you might want to consider going with a traditional bank alongside your challenger bank, or leaving your account open with whoever you currently bank with. Just make sure that you pick an account that is cheap and a credit card that is either free or offers you really good rewards along with a good opening bonus. I personally still have accounts with 2 major banks, and I have a bunch of free credit cards that I rarely use, which means that my credit utilization is really low, which boosts my score. And of course, I am not a financial advisor, I'm just a dude on YouTube, and there might be some risks involved with challenger banks that I don't know about yet, or that we don't know about yet, because sometimes these companies do actually end up being too good to be true. But for now, it just seems like people have figured out a way to outcompete the traditional banking system, making things more efficient, and all the while saving you money in the process. To illustrate just how popular these banks are in Europe, Monzo actually made headlines back in 2016 when they crashed the crowdfunding service Crowdcube because there were so many people wanting to invest in the company itself at the same time. Between that and all the awesome services that Monzo offered, my mind was absolutely blown. So I proudly marched around with my orange card, which felt like a giant middle finger to these old, outdated banks that didn't trust me enough to give me a bank account. Suffice it to say that I loved and still love challenger banks. The problem was that when I moved back to North America in 2019, I realized that there were no services like this available to me at the time. Since I now live in Canada, I was forced to bank with one of the usual suspects, so I went back to 0.05% savings accounts. But then I discovered Koho, and shortly after, TransferWise rebranded to Wise and became a challenger bank itself. So that's now covering me in Europe, and I use Koho here in Canada. And between those two, my passion for everyday banking has reignited and is back to Monzo levels. So those are the 2 challenger banks I use. Let me know in the comments which one you use, and if you try a new one, what you think of their services. please pass this video on to a friend who might need it. It's the fastest and easiest way to help me out, along with a gentle tap of the like button. And I just want to say thank you for being here, for your attention, and for supporting small channels on YouTube. I really appreciate it a lot. So with all that being said, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you here real soon. Cheers.